Hey guys, this is Alpha Day 3 Christmas Tote Bag. I found this red and white striped fabric at Walmart. It was 4 yards for $4, and I thought it'd be great for Christmas. First, I made my templates. For the sides of the bag, I made a 15-inch by 10-inch rectangle and added a 1.5 inch strip at the top, making it 15 inches by 11.5 inches. I made a 1/4 of an inch strip for my seam allowance. This will be used for both sides. For the bottom of the bag, I made a 15-inch by 5-inch rectangle and I folded in 2.5 inches on both sides. For the straps, I made a 1-inch by 11-inch strip. Trace your templates onto the back side of the fabric. I traced the side template with the seam allowance on both sides and the 1.5 inch strip added to the top, followed by the bottom piece folded in and the side template placed upside down with the seam allowance and 1.5 inch strip added to the bottom. Cut it out and it should look like this. I traced the strap template onto fabric with the seam allowance added to all sides. You'll need to make 4 of these. 2 pieces make 1 strap. Align the edges of the bag with the backs facing out. Then pin the sides. Next, sew the marked seam allowance on both sides of the bag. I also sewed a zigzag stitch along the edge so that the fabric wouldn't fray. Then align the edges at the bottom of the bag. Pin it and sew a 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. I also sewed a zigzag stitch along the edge. Make sure that the side seams face the same direction. Then fold the top of the bag over to the 1.5 inch mark and fold it over again. Pin and sew it. Then turn it inside out. I sewed 1/8 of an inch away from the top and bottom of the strip. Next, align the 2 pieces of the strap with the backs facing out. Pin and sew it, but leave an opening on the longer side. Cut around the corners to prevent bunching. Then turn it inside out. I use the end of a pencil to reach the corners. Fold in the fabric at the opening and sew around the edges. Then fold the bag to find its center. Pin the ends of the straps at the same distance away from the center. I align the ends of the straps to the threaded line of the bag and pin them. I sewed a box with an X in it. To make the bag more sturdy, I added a base. I cut a 10-inch by 5-inch piece of interfacing and ironed it onto fabric. I did need to hold the iron over the same area for a while to get the interfacing to bond to the fabric. Add a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance around the interfacing and cut it out. Cut another piece that's the same size. Align and sew the pieces together with the backs facing out. Be sure to leave an opening. Cut around the corners and turn it inside out. Fold in the fabric at the opening and sew 1/8 of an inch away from the edge on all sides. Place it at the bottom of the bag, and your Christmas tote bag is done.